We come to the attributes of God, lesson 8. I've divided this into lesson 8a and lesson 8b. And it's really an addendum. It's something that we've just need to look at this part of the course and get it clear in our minds. When we study God and his attributes, we call that what? We call it our theology. And there's a matter that has caused some confusion amongst Christians, so-called Christians, not necessarily really Christians, but people who would tend to call themselves Christians. Skeptics and the opponents of Christianity very seldom refer to this matter, although they will occasionally. They will bring it up and they'll refer to it and then they'll pass on quickly because they're much more clever than most Christians and they don't want to get too caught up in this matter, but they will bring it up just to find out how naive we are. But they very seldom refer to this matter, and this is because they're not nearly as gullible and naive as many of the so-called Christians of our time, particularly in this modern day and age. The skeptics understand that for them to use this matter against Christians would create more problems for them than it's worth. And so they will bring it up, they'll test us out, and if they see that we're naive, then they'll bring it up. But if they see that we're not naive, they'll quickly pass on because they don't want to get caught up in it. Of course, the skeptics do not need to raise this matter, as most often it's Christians that raise it and bring it up for them. What's the matter I'm referring to? Well, it's the matter of so-called circular reasoning in our approach to theology and the scriptures. We're specifically speaking here of the study of God, our theology, his essence, his attributes and his character. And this is how it's put to us. We claim to know about God, our theology, because we have his essence, attributes and character revealed to us in the scriptures. And that's the only way we know about God. It's revealed to us in the scriptures. We also claim that the scriptures are inspired by God and are authoritative. They have authority, they're powerful, and they're alive. We call it quick. They are alive, based on the essence, attributes and character of God, which we only know about because we find this information in these same scriptures. And this is all very true. That's the truth. So, A, we find out about God from the scriptures. B, the authority and inspiration of the scriptures is only established in the light of the attributes of God revealed to us in the scriptures. So to put the argument as simply as we can put it. 1, we use the scriptures to justify our belief in God. Is this true? Yes, this is true. Number 2, we use our beliefs in God to justify the authority and the inspiration of the scriptures. True? True. It is true. So I'll say it again. We use the scriptures to justify our belief in God. True. We do. Number 2, we use our beliefs in God to justify the authority and the inspiration of the scriptures. Is it true? It is true. So this would appear to be circular reasoning and a very simple tool for the skeptics to use against us to destroy the basic foundations of all that we believe. All that we believe is based on our theology. It's the top line, remember? Theology is the top line. Everything comes out of our theology. So, if the skeptic can so easily destroy our entire theology, why doesn't he do it? Now, let's talk about this idea of circular reasoning. Do we use circular reasoning? Well, yes, we, as creationists, we believe that God created everything, and we very effectively use this argument of circular reasoning against the evolutionists. Now, the evolutionists claim that they determine the age of the fossil finds. When they find a fossil, how do they determine the age of the fossil? Well, by the age of the rocks the fossils are found in. So we say to them, well, how do you know how old the rocks are? Well, they determine the age of the rocks by the fossils that are found in them. Right? I'll say it again. They determine the age of the fossils by the age of the rocks that they find the fossils in, and they determine the age of the rocks by the age of the fossils that are found in them. Now that's truly circular reasoning, and they've got no answer for this, and it causes them great embarrassment when we bring it up. They hope that we won't bring it up, but of course we do bring it up because of circular reasoning. But the reason that the skeptic does not use this argument of circular reasoning against us about the scriptures and the existence of God is that he knows that this stated case that we've put is not the whole argument. He understands that there are other factors that he must take into account, and these break the circle. They make it not quite so simple and straightforward as he tends to want us to believe. And they give the argument that we have reason and logic. Before we start though, let us be perfectly clear at this point in our discussion that the fact that God chose to reveal himself through the written word is not a problem for us as Christians. Firstly, it's reasonable and logical that God would reveal himself to mankind. We are his creation and he created us for his own good pleasure. Revelation 4:11 tells us this. Naturally, he not only wants us to know about him, but he actually wants us to actually know him. And so he had to reveal himself to us in some way, and it's not a problem for us that he chose to do this through the written word, because it's reasonable and logical that God would use the medium of the written word to convey this revelation of himself to mankind. It makes perfect sense for God to do it this way. In fact, it is the most reasonable and the most logical way that God could have done it. Thirdly, it's clear that this is a very reasonable and practical means of universally conveying this revelation. How would God reveal himself to mankind in another way that would be so universally available? Well, the written word is the most universally available way God could do it. God can do as he chooses, and this is what he's chosen. God is omnipotent. He can decide to do it this way. We as Christians are thankful that in revealing himself through the written word, God has made it so possible for us to have it so easily. And certainly in this day and age, when we have the written word and we have it through technology, it is more available than it's ever been throughout history. There are other factors that we must look at, but before we do, we must understand that with every belief system, there is of necessity an element of faith. A belief system means you believe it by faith. Also, let's be clear about this fact. Everyone, without any exceptions at all, has a belief system on which they base their lives and their eternal destiny. The atheist has a belief system just as much as the Christian does. Everybody has a belief system that they base their lives and their eternal destiny on. Those who believe that God exists, like we do, they believe it by faith. Those who claim that they believe that God does not exist do so by faith. The atheist is an atheist by faith. He believes by faith that God doesn't exist, or so he says. I myself don't believe that there are any atheists in actual fact. The evolutionists believe what he does simply by faith. He can no more prove what he believes about evolution than we can prove that God exists. There is no belief system that is outside this parameter of faith. Even the person who claims to have no belief system claims this by faith, right? He's simply claiming that he believes there is no belief system. So he's the greatest hypocrite that you can possibly get. So now, having established this fact that everyone has a belief system which they believe by faith, let's begin to look at those factors which break this circle of reasoning in regard to our theology. And the first factor that we will look at is this. If this reason is taken to its logical conclusion, and we discount all knowledge of God, because we say the scriptures have no authority, we can only conclude that the scriptures don't bring truth to us, that we don't have the truth, and that they're not accurate. And this leaves us with no grounds to believe in God in any way. But then we must understand that all the sacred writings of all the different religions of the world come into the same category. Why is this so? Well, because all the religions use their scriptures, their religious writings, to justify their belief in their particular God. And all religions use their beliefs in their particular God to justify the authority and the inspiration of their scriptures. So we're all in the same boat. If there really is no God and no inspired revelation, it may be, and it probably is, true that there is no heaven and no hell, no right, no wrong, no punishment for evil and no reward for good. There's therefore no first cause or logical basis for all the scientific laws that provably exist. They just all had to just happen. Now that's not very scientific, is it? There is no purpose to life, no reason that we exist. We are born, we live, we die, and it is all for nothing. This is all there is to life. Now, if this is all true, it doesn't really matter what anybody believes, and all belief is totally irrelevant, the same for the atheist as for everyone else, and the same for the skeptic. But think about this. If all this is actually so, and the skeptics are right, and there is no God, and the Bible is not God's revelation, under these circumstances, we as Christians have been very, very wise and extremely clever. Why have we been? Well, we've put in place a belief system that although there's no purpose for life, our belief system provides a real purpose for life and a real meaning to our lives. We have been extremely clever to put in place a writing like the Bible to guide us in our belief system. We're the happiest people in the world. We're the most confident people. We're the most assured group of people in the world. We're evangelistic. We want to tell everybody about it. We're excited about it. We're motivated, right, by what this Bible that we've put in place. We see life as being filled with joy, being filled with security, and being full of opportunity. Now, what could be better than that? What we believe gives us hope in this world. If we are right, we've gained everything that it's possible to gain. If we're wrong, we've lost absolutely nothing. Now, what could be better than that? If we're wrong, we will eventually just die, and will we know that we haven't gone to heaven? No, we'll never know that we haven't gone to heaven. And so for us, by faith, the circle of reasoning is already broken. And we can put aside this argument of the skeptics. But the next factor we'll look at is this. If the Bible is just another book written by men and not inspired, how do we and how do the skeptics account for it? Right? How did it get there? How does it exist? Why does it exist? It was written by many different men from many different backgrounds, in many different countries, in at least 2 totally different languages. And to add to this, it was written over a period of approximately 1,500 years, right? That any book should come into existence this way makes that book special and unique. To add to this, we discover by intensive study, and the Bible is the most intensively studied book in history, we discover that despite all the factors stated above, that it was written by different men in different backgrounds, different countries, different languages, over 1,500 years, we discover that when we read and study the Bible, it's one book. Now, all these different people wrote it, and yet it's one book. It is perfectly cohesive. It all goes together. And it provides the only perfect example of progressive revelation available in the world. It is revelation in the Scriptures is revealed progressively, and this is perfectly so throughout the whole of the Scriptures without any error anywhere. It's also the only book ever written that applies the first usage principle with absolute and infallible consistency. In the Bible, and only in the Bible, we find that there is a principle of first usage, and that first usage principle is infallibly applied in the Bible. And then there's the matter of preservation, the fact that we've still got the Scriptures. The Bible has been around for far too long to be just an ordinary book. Most books only circulate for a limited time. Now, in our modern literature, a book can come out and be a big hit and millions of copies be sold, and when you come along 10 years later, the book's not available. And there's not many books that are available even for hundreds of years. But the Bible's been around for a long time. Where are all the other religious writings perfectly preserved for thousands of years to be found? Now we know Egypt and Babylon and Medo-Persia and Greece and Rome, all the great empires of the past, all had religions, and they developed these religions over the years. They committed them to writing, and they put these sacred writings, as they called them, they preserved them, but where are they now? And if we found them, who wants to read them? They're not around, though some of them we can still find in museums and different places, but nobody wants to read them. And why is this so? Why is it that after 3,500 years since the Pentateuch was first written, the first 5 books of the Bible, they were written 3,500 years ago by Moses, but the Bible's still around, it's still available, and it's still avidly sought after. People are grasping for the Bible. People are seeking to have a Bible of their own. People are willing to pay almost any price to have their own Bible. People are constantly trying to get hold of a Bible for themselves. How come that it's so? Millions of people, not just students, not just people who are studying, but ordinary people. Why is it that almost 2,000 years after the Bible canon was completed, after the whole Bible had been put together with the book of Revelation, there is more demand for the Bible than for any other book in history? But you say, hang on a minute now, it can be argued that this is also true of other religious writings. What about the Quran? Now, there's probably close to 1 billion Muslims in the world, and every Muslim has a Quran, and he studies it and learns it off by heart. What about that? Well, the difference is, of course, that every Muslim has to, right? He must do it. It's mandatory, it's not voluntary. He doesn't have a choice. The Bible and Christianity is exactly the opposite. This is one factor that sets the Bible apart from all other religious writings. To buy it and to study it is voluntary. And yet millions of people continue to do it. Though Christians very rarely even consider these things, the skeptics are much more discerning, and they would rather not venture along this path.